What is up, ladies and gentle nerds? It's your boy Graham, also known as HamHawks42 on the internet, and today is another edition of Overthinking MTG. Today we're going to be looking at a random magic card. I'm going to talk about it for probably about 10 minutes or so, or I'm going to end up talking about it for 20 minutes or half an hour because it's a basic land and it has really cool art, and I love just talking about stuff. But this is all unscripted, unedited, off the dome. Let's go. I'm going to go ahead and click that random card button. All right, and we are looking at Dauntless Escort. Now, Dauntless Escort is a Rhino Soldier, which is interesting. It is a 3/3 for 1, a green, and a white. And you can sacrifice Dauntless Soldier. Creatures you control are indestructible this turn. That's interesting. And the image that it shows is a rhino soldier, like a humanoid rhino, holding up a very large shield, which is interestingly enough blocking itself, like it's protecting itself clearly with that shield, and then in its backhand it's holding up it's wielding a warhammer. So this very much looks like, if you can envision a D&D cleric, like that's definitely what I'm seeing here. We're seeing big shield, heavy armor, big old mace, and this it's a rhino person. I really don't know how else to describe it. And so it's, I don't know, flavorfully it's interesting because I don't really understand exactly how it works, because in the image we have, well, let me rephrase that. It's not that I don't understand how it works, but in the image the creature is protecting itself. However, with the flavor, or with the mechanic, it dies to protect others. And in the artwork, there aren't any others in the image, so I can't help but wonder if the artwork was commissioned perhaps separately from the card being designed, or I don't know. It doesn't really matter. That's nitpicking for sure. But so, and actually, I've got another nit I'm going to pick on the creature type. But in any event, you can sacrifice it to give all creatures you control indestructible. Like, that's freaking amazing. So if your opponent tries to cast some kind of board wipe, you can just be like, no, you get this 1/3/3. Everything else is not going anywhere. So if you're in Selesnya, if you're in Bant, if you're in any of those colors, this thing is going to be pretty freaking sweet. And this is actually from Alara Reborn. So presumably, like, I'd imagine this looks to me like it would be associated with Bant. That'd be my guess, based on the Alara shards. I don't know a ton about them, but I mean, I know what colors they represent. And Bant being green, white, blue, and for some reason I was like, oh man, you just said these, don't mess this up. But yeah, so I don't know, it's a pretty cool little insurance policy. And in a situation where you're playing the Selesnya colors, or you're playing green and white, a lot of those decks try to go wide with tokens, and so one of your biggest vulnerabilities is board wipes, which is interesting because one of white's biggest strength is board wipes. So that's a little awkward. But if your opponent plays Wrath of God, for example, no, it doesn't work. I've sacrificed my Dauntless Escort. Everything else is perfectly fine. Frickin' deal with it. And you can't touch it for the rest of this turn. So, it's going to be fine, and I'm going to untap with it. Just, do you got any instant speed board wipes that you still somehow have mana up for? If not, yeah, tough luck, dude. Sorry. And so, this actually reminds me very much of the Alseid of Life's Bounty, which is a card that's legal in Standard right now, which is it's a 1/1 that you can sacrifice for 1 mana, and you can give a target protection from any color, the color of your choice. And so that makes one creature effectively, untouchable from sources of that color. So it's a way to sacrifice one creature to protect another. And in the way that plays, I know going up against it as well as using it, you have to account for it. Always. Like, you just do. Always keep the mana up for it in that case, because it does require mana. Meanwhile, Dauntless Escort doesn't. And you have to... it's very frustrating, actually, being, as someone who plays a lot of Rakdos and a lot of Grixis, I have a lot of targeted removal in a lot of my decks. And I have a handful of board wipes, because I really love those late game strategies, and I need to be able to survive to get to the late game. So a lot of low cost board wipes, really useful. Tell those aggro decks to go pound sand. It's nice. Cry the Crenarium is your best friend. Trust me, that card rules. Don't leave home without it. But if I have something like that, okay, Cry of the Cranarium is a bad example, but something like Flame Sweep. Now, if I have Flame Sweep in hand, I know I need to get rid of the All Seed of Life's Bounty first, otherwise they are going to have their pick of what creature survives. And that's a problem. That is a very real problem for me, because a lot of the time they're just going to pick Lurrus, and then they're going to use Lurrus to bring their All Seed back next turn, and then it's almost like I didn't board wipe at all. So I need to use whatever targeted removal I have on the All Seed first, regardless of anything else that's going on. And that stinks. Now, Dauntless Escort, if you're running removal that is based on destroy effects or damage, is very much the same thing. Like, if you have a lightning bolt in hand, you've got to hit this thing. You just do. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do any, you're not going to be able to remove anything. I guess the other thing you could do, though, is target their biggest, most important creature otherwise, and basically force them to sacrifice this and then play a board wipe the following turn. Something like that would work. Because if you target this with the lightning bolt, they'll just sacrifice it in response. Because it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I don't know what you're planning I don't know what you're planning, but you're gonna have to deal with an indestructible board while you do it. So if you've got an answer for that, okay, neat. If not, don't worry about it. Like, if not, I'm gonna get the effect anyway. You've just managed to remove. You've chosen the time. You have forced me to trigger it, but I'm still going to, because there's no reason not to. Yeah, it's fantastic. So this is a really great card in Selesnya strategies. If you are doing go wide token strategies, if you're doing the white weenie approach, something like this is fantastic. Insurance against board wipes is going to be your best friend. So Dauntless Escort, cards like, I believe it's Brought Back, where it's like 2 white and you take every creature that went to the graveyard. I think it may actually be any permanent you control that went to the graveyard this turn and return to the battlefield. Like, things like that are fantastic. And Dauntless Escort definitely does the job. If you have access to these colors, I'd say this is really good. Now, if you're not doing a go wide strategy, it doesn't quite fit. It's not like it could be fine depending on what else is going on, but like, one of the things that I really enjoy, a strategy that I like very, very much, is Mutate. I think Mutate's a ton of fun. Is it amazing? Not necessarily, but you can get some really cool things going with it. And having a Dauntless Escort as something you could have on the side in a Mutate deck, all right, not a bad idea, because you can always give your Mutate stack indestructible. That could be really, really useful. However, I would never want to Mutate on top of this guy, because I wouldn't want to mutate on top of something that required me to sacrifice it in order to execute the trigger. Because if you've mutated anything on top of this, you have to sacrifice it and all of the other stuff in order to trigger the indestructibility. So that just doesn't work. Like, it just straight up is not going to synergize the way you want it to. And so that would be a terrible idea. Flip side to that is, if you're running, say, a control deck where you don't really have that many other creatures, the only creatures that you really want in those situations are ones that can help you win the game. And, you're going to want your Bone Crusher Giants, potentially, but really, like, your Dream Trawlers. Those things are really going to help in put the pressure on your opponent. Even your Brazen Borrowers, that's one of the things that makes that card so amazing, is it's controlling the early game, and it's a evasive threat that can deal 3 damage a turn late game. That's amazing, and exactly the kind of stuff that control decks want. So, that's why that card was going for $100 at one point. I don't know where it is right now, but it's not too much further down than that, I don't think. Because it's amazing. Fortunately, well, actually, no, it's actually rotation proof. Oy. Yeah, so it's not going anywhere. Anyway, but I say all that because if you're playing like a Bant control style situation, Dauntless Escort's not going to be that great for you, because you're not going to be able to get much value off the sacrifice trigger, and 3 mana that is in 2 separate colors for just a 3/3 that you're going to use to just punch your opponent in the face is a terrible rate. You can do so much better than that, especially something like a 3/3 that can be chump blocked. If you're in a situation where you're trying to win the game with, like, when I say control decks, by the way, the traditional control deck setup is I stop you from doing everything you want to do, and then on turn like 5 or 6, I slap some huge threat that you don't have the resources to respond to, because I've been stripping you of everything you've been trying to set up this whole game. And then all of a sudden, I have the biggest thing on the board, and unless you have a direct answer for it, there's nothing, I win the game. And that's why cards like Dream Trawler are so amazing, because they give you card advantage and they protect themselves. Because even if your opponent has an answer, there's a good chance that you can just work around it. If somebody tries to destroy your Dream Trawler with a targeted removal spell, you can discard to give it hexproof. That's one of the things that makes that card so freaking amazing. And it can deal an obscene amount of damage in the air. So, Dream Trawler is a great example of the kind of control finishers that you want. And that's not what Dauntless Escort is at all. Dauntless Escort is a support piece. He helps the board that you have established. If you're counting on him to help you win the game, he's not going to get there. He can help protect what you have, which is appropriate because it's clearly a tank type character. If you're familiar with MMOs, as someone who actually played a Tauren warrior back in his WoW days and many years ago now, I can appreciate that because this is it's a big old creature with a big old shield. So I get that. I feel for this guy. I'm on board with this Rhino Soldier. The other thing that I find really interesting, though, the other little nit that I want to pick, its creature type says Rhino. Why is this a Rhino? Meanwhile, there's another race of sentient Rhino people who are called Rhox. Rhox. How come they get to be something else? Why do they get to be Rhox? Meanwhile, Dauntless Escort here is a Rhino. Someone explain that to me. Meanwhile, at the same time, we have something like Siege Rhino, which is a bestial rhino that is on all fours. Now, it's wearing like barding, but it's clearly a beast of warfare. Meanwhile, Dauntless Escort here is clearly or at least as a human who associates humanoid figures with like sentience, and he's clearly using tools, in holding weapons. So this is clearly an intelligent being. This is clearly I don't know. It's clearly a sentient creature that is very intelligent, and it's still a rhino. It's the same creature type. It has the same type line as the big dumb monster, not the other sentient race of rhino people. So it's a little thing, but at the same time, like, really? And actually we did look at Rhox Faithmender in an earlier episode of this very podcast. That was a Rhox. It was a rhino person, and it was called Rhox. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, I brought that up too because there are multiple printings of the card Rhox and RHOX. If you go look it up, some of them are humanoid where it's wielding a club, and others are bestial where it's on all fours and not wearing clothes. And so I guess I'm not really sure what are the Rhox? Like, what are they, guys? Although, I mean, the idea of things being a little inconsistent in this game, like, I shouldn't be too hung up on that, because I feel like any piece of fiction that is producing standalone fragments of a story, like these cards are, and fragments of worlds, and across dozens of worlds over the course of 2+ decades, yeah, there's going to be some inconsistencies or some awkwardness between printings. That's guaranteed. So I really shouldn't get hung up on that, but at the same time, I can't help but wonder. So yeah, Dauntless Escort, come on, justice for Dauntless Escort. This guy's a Rhox. Let's give him the love he deserves and call him a Rhox. Anyway, so yeah, it's an interesting card. If I'm going wide, I would love to have this in an EDH token deck. I'd absolutely adore it because, well, they need as much protection from board wipes as they can possibly get. Now, it's important to note that Indestructible only helps with board wipes that are based on damage or based on effects that say destroy. And the reason for that is toughness reducing below 0. So in the case of something like, I believe it's Blasphemous Act, where things get Blasphemous Act is 13 damage. Never mind that. But something like Decree of Pain, where all creatures get -X. Something like that. It doesn't care if the creature's indestructible or not. It still dies. Also, exile effects. Exile doesn't care about indestructibility either. So if it's going to be exiled, it's gone anyway. So Dauntless Escort isn't a perfect solution. Oh, also board wipes that bounce back to hand. So Evacuation or Cyclonic Rift. This doesn't help at all either. Actually, if anything, trying to take advantage of that is just going to lose you your Dauntless Escort. It's just going to go into the graveyard instead of back to your hand, which, it back in your hand is a really rough tempo situation and definitely slows you down. However, it's not, you're not out of the game. So it's not perfect. Like, it's not perfect protection for your team, but it can really help. Not to mention in combat, like if something goes horribly wrong and somebody has like a weird combat trick that you didn't see coming, it's an emergency escape button so that you can just like, wait, no, oh, that attack was bad. Abort, get out. That's an option. You can just say like, oh, they're all indestructible now, haha, and you'll be fine. Your team is going to survive. So even if you overextend, even if they get into a situation that they can't solve, this guy's going to help. So I like Dauntless Escort a lot. If you're running tokens, definitely check this guy out. It's from Alara Reborn, so it's not legal in a lot of formats, but at the same time, like, it's a cool card from back in the day. I definitely respect it. So yeah, thanks so much for hanging out, everybody. This has been, well, it's been a delight as always. I love talking about this stuff, as you can tell. If you want to hear me talk more about this stuff, or if you have questions about your favorite cards, or would like to request one, I do have a Discord server. The link is in the description below. You can hop out there and shoot me a message anytime. You can also hop over to my stream over on twitch.tv/hamhawks42. I'm over there almost every day for various points. There's a schedule posted over there. Definitely don't hesitate to pop on out and say hi. I love hearing from everybody, and just keeping that conversation alive is truly a delight. So thank you so much for hanging out. It's been a delight. I'm gonna say it again. It's been a delight. You know why? Because you're a delight, and I'm hanging out with you. All right. Have a great day, and I will catch you next time.